Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us here. Now let's switch conversations from the realities of our health to the realities of our politics. Many times what happens in the political stages defines what is rolled out in terms of health services. However, the orientation of politics is very much important. Increasingly, as the country prepares for the general election in January next year, politicians are beginning to jostle and take positions. Now, in taking positions, you want the vantage points where you can actually galvanize a little bit more support than what you have. Many of those politicians are increasingly using youth. And within those youth sectors, there are what people refer to as gangs. If you are one that has been on the streets of Kampala of late, you could come across the word egali. Egali, loosely translated as vigilante, a group that works on the orders and machinations of whoever is bankrolling. Much of it has been seen. The National Unity Platform has found itself in a spot of bother over egali or gangs. But if events in the last 2 weeks are anything to go by, especially during the nomination and the return of papers by President Yoweri Museveni, then gangs could well be a phenomenon that is widely used across the political divide. This morning, we're going to try and understand how this is happening, why it must not, and what ought to happen, especially in as far as the participation of youth in the politics of our country is concerned. I'm joined on set by gentlemen who will be helping us on that with critical perspective. I have Philip Kakuru on my extreme left, youth politician within the National Resistance Movement. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Many thanks for joining us too. David Musiri, Boji, Head of Institutions at the National Unity Platform.
Yeah, I'm Head of Institution Emeritus now.
Emeritus,
Yes. Good morning, viewers. Good morning, fellow panelists.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. We also have with us Roger Skiega, youth politician. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Your very first time on MorningAtNTV?
Sure.
No doubt. We shall begin with you in typical courtesy to a visitor. But don't worry, we are going to focus on the participation of youth in our politics as a country. Now, participation comes in so many ways. There is participating in a bad way. Some youth have been used over the years by politicians to engage in violence, something that hasn't augured well and has had huge consequences for them. But the increasing use of gangs, who are mostly youth, is a disturbing phenomenon. I don't know whether it disturbs you as much as it does disturb me and any other person out there.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Good morning to all our viewers. Well, to begin with, it's not new that we have youth participating in youth elections. We have seen it in Nairobi, we have seen it in Tanzania, and other places elsewhere. But now we are looking at it in the context of, yes, they are participating, good or bad, but we need to dissect. If they are participating for the good, where is the participation and how is it taking this country forward? If they are participating for the bad, then what's the cause or the reason behind their bad participation? And we cannot run away from the fact that there is someone mobilizing them at both parts of the aisle. Look at it in all different parties. And I think this started way back in 2007-2008 elections in Kenya, where we saw a very big turn-up of youths. But they did not bring themselves. There were different people behind them, mobilizing them. Now, the direction the youth will take in any cause for mobilization mainly is determined by who is the mobilizing factor behind them. What's the mobilizing force behind them? So if you're mobilizing them for good, definitely good. The youth are very good driving force for development. But then if you're really mobilizing them with no clear direction, there can be a very big sense of destruction and violence. So youth participation is not the problem. Setting the direction on how they should participate and how they should engage, and what is the end result in their participation should be the main focus of whoever is mobilizing, and the agenda behind the mobilization. So I think their participation, youth participation, is very important, because at the end of the day, we are in 2025, but the youths of 2025 are going to be the big people in the next 10, 15 years. They could be occupying big places in government and other private sector areas. So their participation is very good, but the mobilization should be centered, it should be directional, it should be intentional.
Okay.
Yes.
We're talking about centered, intentional, directional. Those are all things that we shall be discussing a little bit later. But allow me bring in Mr. Philip Kakuru, the Senior Presidential Advisor on Trade and also politician within the National Resistance Movement. The NRM finds itself in a spot of bother right now, especially regarding the conduct of youth, as President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was going for nomination, and also when he returned the papers for nomination. It was something that put the National Resistance Movement in bad light, given the fact that previously the NRM has been at the forefront of castigating the National Unity Platform on what appears to be its apparent inability to govern most of the youth, especially when mobilization campaigns are going on. What do you say about that?
Thank you and good morning to the viewers. I like the analogy my young brother has used about the youth participation in the body politics. The youth, time immemorial, have been the agents of change on the African continent, right from the Thomas Sankaras to the young revolutionaries of the Musevens, to the America Cabros, the Marshalls. The youth, including the Nelson Mandelas of this African continent. And we've seen the youth politics shape the struggle against the white rule. We've seen a generation of the youth take over in our government from an ideological thinking that the youth at the University of Makerere joining President Museveni to try to bring out the bad, to take out the bad rule that was there, where they feel they've been placed on the wall. Now, what has been the case in all these youth movements is the thinking behind the doing. Why do they behave the way they do? If the youth are ideologically prepared for a purposeful agenda, yes, the youth will be very useful and proactively used. But I want you to understand that there are two forces in society: reactionary and what we call engagement. If the youth are engaged in purposeful use, for example, the youth employment programs, or what you'd call the youth livelihood program that has been going on in Uganda, skilling the youth, equipping them with the youth, cheap capital, to involve them in productive ways, the youth will be very useful. If you use the youth into purposeful work, recruiting them into the army, recruiting them into the police, they become part of the body fabric of our society. Now, what you've talked about, the most recent incident of the youth participation in the nomination of the party chairman, and that, like any other society, you'll find that either whoever was guiding them, they were not purposefully prepared for what they were meant to do, or it was an epitome of something to say, okay, some people think they're experts in causing chaos. And you find that, and there is nobody with the legitimacy on how to cause chaos. Everybody has the ability to cause chaos, even a good man, because we believe that every human being has an element of insanity in him.
No doubt.
So when you trigger, they are what we call triggers. Somebody can be preempted to prove to your point that, you know what, I can show you my mandate. And the ghetto youth were there to display their ability that actually we can rival what anybody is bringing to the fold. So to me, I believe it was like a display. all a curtain raise of let's not take the country to where it should be. But the NRM has had good programs, like I've mentioned, youth livelihood programs. It has rolled out the youth engagement programs to get them out of the ghetto, to equip the youth into the military, to bring the youth into the body politics. If you've seen the most recent, I think, the elections, they just concluded the NRM elections. I think the Electoral Commission, the youth won most of the areas within Kampala, even the one which are coming for the voting for the LSC2s. So you realize that if well directed, the youth can be used for the national development purposefully. And that should be the conversation we should all have as a people in the country, that how do we utilize the effort of the youth to bring them into a transformative and purposeful use. And those are the two words that I talk about, not the radical thinking. I had my brother talk about, if youth are radicalized, then we can bring a lot of harm to the community.
Of course, there is need to stay away from radicalization, but what I gather from your submissions is that there is a group, a core pack of people who are choosing to use the youth for any purpose that they do want, and that is something we should also pay attention to, because if, for example, when you say that no one has a monopoly on violence, and that could have been a gesture to show that we can also do the things that some people can. It is a direct shot at the National Unity Platform, which has been characterized as being able to use violence or mobilize gangs, so to speak. It's a reputation that I really don't think you are comfortable with as a party, and I don't know whether you have internal mechanisms within the party to address that issue, which might either be true or not.
To our viewers and dear panelists, I think it is a misconception when you hear such analogies come in and out. But first of all, going back to the theme, because for me, when I look at political relationship of the gangs, we must look at the political ideology. And I want to commend a champion of ideology, that is Thomas Sankara from Burkina Faso, who said that even he talked about a soldier, the army itself, that even a soldier without a political ideology or a political training is a potential criminal. And that's where things start from. Because if I want to remind you, the last time we had a conversation on the same, I think we had a scenario in Kabaragala where one of our students of senior 3 was murdered in cold blood just because he had refused to join a gang around there. And that was pretended by a commander, Damulira. You remember, it is not an allegation. It's not an allegation as we talk now. And if last time when I was talking about it, I assumed even to be lying, because I think it was you yourself. You asked so much questions on my assertion, and my assertion was very clear, because this is what is happening. I've been following the trend of the criminal syndicate. If you remember, this started on 19th, you know. I don't want to go so much back, but of recent, last month on the 19th, we had the youth elections. I am telling you, I participated myself physically in these elections, and what surprised us is gangs everywhere, putting on yellow, putting on Genome 70s t-shirts, you know, violating, of course, causing a lot of ruckus around electoral areas, you know. They actually assumed the powers of electoral commission in some areas. And I want to tell you that also tantamounted to what we saw. So this has been organized. It is organized criminal, you know. It's not just normal gangs as maybe people purport. You see, some of the people I am talking about sometimes purport to be as if they love this country than the youths themselves. And to the viewers, we all know that the youths of this country have been insulted so many times, you know, ideologically, even when very many promises, empty promises have been coming, people saying, for example, the analogies that you are the leaders of tomorrow and you have a government or you have a tyranny in this country who has now taken over 40 years, you know. He has eaten up 4 generations, and now when you see, for example, the number of the youths, it is just by default that they have to be part of us, the oppressed. They have to be part of us in the opposition because, one, they are vulnerable. This government has made them vulnerable in many cases. When you look at, for example, we were citing here precedents, for example, from Kenya, the Gen Zs, when there was oppression, when there is oppression, these youths must rise. As himself was also saying that, for example, even First Fanon talks about it, that every generation must discover their mission. It is incumbent on them either to fulfill the mission or betray it. So whatever the youths now want to do is try to liberate themselves. But in the meanwhile, you find there are a few people, like he was talking about, like the commanders. I would still mention Commander Damulira because he has been on site. We have videos of him trying to camouflage around that he loves this country, but at the end of the day, he's training gangs to destroy people's lives.
Gentlemen, allow me point out some clarity. We're going to have to keep, because if we are, for example, if we give ourselves the leeway to talk about the whole youth aspect in entirety, as in a generation, it's going to be a very difficult conversation and one that we shall fail to put into context. I want us to understand the gang violence and the use of certain youth by politicians. Let me stay with you, Mr. Musiri. Why? Because the National Unity Platform has often found itself in a spot of bother on how it manages the actions of its supporters, who are mostly youth. The security forces have an accusation that some of them carry stones and will throw them at the officers when they get the opportunity, and hence the reaction. But what is the mechanism within the National Unity Platform to manage how youth act or how they behave at any one party event or campaign process? Or are these gentlemen and women unmanageable to you as a party?
No. First of all, for NUP, and why you are seeing government panicking is because one of, you'll get your time, you know. Don't
worry, please go on quickly.
So, and why you are seeing General Museveni panicking is because we are a youthhood party. This does not exonerate the elders that we have in the party, but of course we all know that this country has over 78%
young people.
Young people, and of course sometimes he wants to create an impression that actually the youth belong to him, and that's where they make mistakes. But for the NUP, the National Unity Platform has come up with regulators, one of which, the one I started with, that you cannot manage a group of people. For example, this youth is a pool of talents. There is no way you can manage them if you don't regulate them. One of the things that NUP has put in existence is a school of leadership. For example, we are garnering this support that we have and put them in one place to educate them, give them a political training. And that is how we can have a very formidable force, but which is also can interact with the reality. And we have come up with a lot of things. The only problem that we have, and I don't want, because that is exactly what, for example, Thailanders do in countries. When we gather somewhere, for example, they still use Poma, which is not actually, I believe they are using it unconstitutionally, you know. That, for example, when they find us gathering, trying to create awareness to these people, and we all know, and Ugandans know that in this country, the civic space is shrinking. What we need for us to put these youths in the line is to educate them, give them fundamental education. And this is what NUP is doing. You know?
Okay,
and also supporting them, empowering them. For example, if we were in the government, we would actually focus so much on, before we go even to the foreign policy, the internal policy matters. Because government is the biggest investor.
No doubt, no doubt.
The biggest employer. As he was talking about it, there is need to recruit these people in various institutions of government.
Mr. Kiega, I'll be looking out for what I think is a very neutral opinion on this matter. But allow me ask a question that should put Mr. Kakuru in position to counteract effectively, but also tell us, the National Resistance Movement has been known to employ the advantage of money, especially in the mobilization process. So many youth are given money, T-shirts, to be able to come to these rallies without really looking at what is their ideological and social orientation. To the extent that you cannot govern somebody who you've just given a T-shirt and paid 10,000 Uganda shillings. I'm saying this because the youth have said they were paid. We've talked to them as journalists, and no one has come out to counteract the fact that they say that as a falsehood. No. Meaning the use of money to lead youth into spaces that they may not actually be comfortable with or accustomed to. A ghetto youth coming to a political campaign is bound to act like the ghetto. How do you govern that?
All right, thank you, Mr. Igenyi. For starters, I want to assure my colleague here that the NRM has never been threatened. Revolutionaries don't get threatened. We engage. So, secondly, I want to put it clear to you that what Afande Damulila and the Comrade Emma are doing, they are actually trying to help the social order within Kampala by getting these youth engaged in purposeful work. If you do not identify me, by them identifying who these gangs are, it's very important. In research, you identify what we call the problem. When you identify the problem, then you apply different hypothetical scenarios on how to get around the problem. Number one, is it engaging the problem? Secondly, is it ideologically orientating the same youth into purposeful youth? Yes, very correct. That's why I was mentioning the youth employment programs and all that. If these youth are used in different, or channeling them, because every human being, as a teacher, we believe that you can mentor and redefine any human being. You can make him a criminal, you can make him a doctor, you can make him a lawyer. Fidel Castro, one of the greatest revolutionaries, achieved that in Cuba. So with that in mind, I can tell you that when we say, you say they use public order management. Yes, public order management. There must be an order, because an organized community or society will be able to cascade into a disorganized country, because it starts as a community to a society to a country. What you see as at a micro level can cascade into a bigger problem or macro. So when you compare the youth of Uganda and the youth of Kenya, I think these are totally different paradigm game plans. The youth are purposefully looking in Kenya either for ugali, the price of posho in Kenya, while the youth in Uganda could be thinking about something different. To come to Comrade Higenyi's aspect, that when you pick the youth, how do you prepare them for the use that you want them for? For example, you've mentioned that we pick them, pay them money, give them T-shirts. Not at all. For one to be able to engage, I must understand your problem. What is the youth problem? The youth are saying, we want to join this party. They love the yellow party. They want to engage. So when they are brought into the fold, probably you will find, like I said, it's alleged they are about to do so.
They've confessed. We've reported on it.
Somebody making a confession could be purposefully to do something else. You know, when somebody confesses, can we prove it beyond reasonable doubt? That's what the lawyers say. He who alleges must prove. Either we say, here is this man was found in recruitment that is going to behave this way, he has been paid, and beyond reasonable doubt, that's what we call empirical evidence. Otherwise, I can allege that again you paid me to come to the shop. Can you prove it? That's an allegation. So as long as something has not been tested, however, if there is an element of truth,
when I confess,
a confession does not necessarily mean acceptance of guilt.
Because that's where we are. These youths said that we were told that we come around, put on these shirts and escort Muzei.
Which is not a bad thing.
That modus operandi within the national resistance movement is a catalyst for behavior, including what we saw. I do not know whether you are comfortable as a party honcho
to engage them.
No, to continue like that, where you can do mobilization campaigns based entirely on the transaction or hiring, more like a service. Is that?
Politics is not transactional. Politics is not transactional. And the NRM's long stay in power has been on ideological conviction. And this started way back with our president when he could convince the youth at universities at the time, and those who even had jobs, as he mentioned at the nomination day. That's right. That he could convince young graduates from Makere, the Tumukundes, the Muchamuntus, the Ruzindanas who are working, the state attorneys, the Mbabas, the Kategayas, on an ideological thinking to where the country was. Because all these guys were working, others were graduates, but they were convinced of the future that they were seeing. Now, the same thinking, if you bring the ghetto youth to appreciate, somebody will not appreciate you when he's on the other side of the aisle. That's why you can see even some of the members from the opposition who have come to join the NRM, have a conversation, have found themselves into this side of the aisle. Okay. So it's all about an ideological conviction.
Mr. Kiega, these convictions and ideologies, I doubt there has been, and this one I'll be very confident, I doubt there has been an orientation program for these ghetto youth. But speak to us from a perspective that is purely neutral here. When you have political parties use the youth the way Ugandan youth are being either hired sometimes or even co-opted into these political campaigns, it poses a huge problem where support is ready and up for hire. You do not know exactly where your grounding is, so much so that maybe the day you're not able to provide the money, if it is NUP or NRM or FPC, you won't have the support. And that completely tilts the political landscape. It is more like you're waiting for anarchy to happen the moment you're unable to pay.
Chris, it's you see, while listening to Mr. Kakuru here, I really found it very hard listening to him, because you see, I choose not to be neutral because me, I don't work for media, but we need to speak truth.
Now you see where our big problem is.
Chris, at such a time where there's so much at stake.
That's right.
It is so wrong to defend bad behavior. It is so wrong to defend, and that's why you find that Mr. Kakuru is finding it so hard to defend small acts. It's so hard, and I don't want to say I understand his position, but maybe when cameras go off, he will reconsider some of his statements. But no.
It's a conversation.
When we go back to 2007, 2008, what happened in Kenya? These were youths just like us, just like so many other youths in what we call ghettos, But we also need to be reminded that what we call ghettos, these are people's homes, though we choose to characterize them. Back in 2014, 2015, in areas of Unsambia, we used to have young boys. I think none of them was above 25. They used to call themselves the ex-workers.
The what?
Ex-workers.
Ex-workers.
By then I was still in high school.
Wow.
By then I was still in high school. That is 2014 to 2015. So gangs did not just start yesterday. They are following a trend. So a young man from 2014, 2015 who was assuming 16 or 17, how old are they right now? They should be leading another team. Here comes a political situation, a political cycle that now
offers a convenient opportunity for them.
It's a transaction. What do you expect?
To make some money and survive.
And what Mr. Kakuru here is saying, that probably what is happening in Kenya is different from what's happening in Uganda, I think that's also a wrong assumption. Because at the end of the day, what cuts across is the underlying question of what is causing the gangs, even before we go into the transactions or before we go into the season, as you want to call it. Before 2025, 2026, what was the underlying reason behind the gangs?
The gangs forming.
Unemployment, failure to access school. When they talk about government programs, he mentioned about the Youth Lovely program. I do a lot of research on these programs to understand at what extent have the youth actually benefited from these programs. If you try to look up the statistics, it's really hard to sketch the statistics. Let's go back to PDM. How much have the youth benefited from the PDM? Government will come up with statistics like 53% of women, 30% of men, 10% of people with disabilities.
The youth have got 222 billion in the last 10 years.
Yes, what is the real translation of the figures that government comes up with to the reality? I'll give you an example. Chris, today if you woke up and you don't have a job, for tomorrow if Mr. Kakuru woke up and is no longer in the position he has, God and is no... Well, in Luganda they say achogera kosi achileta. But if you woke up one day and he no longer has the position he has, or you don't have the job that you have, what are you left with? You're left to listen to he who provides or he who feeds you will give you the agenda. Now that is the position where the young people have been put, in a sense that if they don't have jobs because government is failing on industrialization or agro-industrialization, then they have to wait for the season where they can do a transaction for a daily bread. And that is the reality. So there's nothing about being neutral in this discussion. Okay. That is the reality. The reality is that they are failing and they're trying to sugarcoat it to make it look like something is happening. Yet in actual sense, we are simply giving Panadol to cancer. There's
a reality that we are dealing with. And I'm glad you talk about the fact that gangs didn't begin yesterday, that gangs have been around. But I'll be coming to you very shortly. We all saw the story of the infamous Sobi. Sobi was a leader of a gang, and at one of his most disturbing interviews, he said he can mobilize 200 youth with the ability to make an individual sleep. Now, that is simple talk for beating you so effectively in one go that you collapse. Now, you have 200 youth within central Kampala or even the metropolitan areas or suburbs who can be galvanized within a day and have the capacity to occasion fainting, collapse, or even death upon whoever they've been told to attack. That problem is significant.
That's why you need a funded
now,
there.
those are the youth that are being bought by politicians and used ahead of the election. Meaning, if violence erupts, we have people who are lethal, trained to kill, engaging each other. Either they've been hired by NUP, NRM. By the way, let's also say they could be hired by JEMA as a political party, because after all, it's an actor.
Seems as you are about to join.
As we wrap,
he has good information.
As we wrap,
I didn't see that
as we wrap up this conversation, yes. I want what should be the solutions to this problem, and from all your points of view, please offer what solutions can be. Let me begin with Mr. Musidi. We have a minute each, and then we shall be out.
A minute is less. But when I was hearing my brother Kakuru here, I only picked theoretical terms, not practical at all. Because when
now offer us the practical
when he
solutions.
talks about the likes of Mutevire, we know that story, how it started in the 80s. It is no longer happening. They actually, I think you do not know what is happening right now on ground. But what
are the solutions?
The solution is, as
Very
I
quickly,
said, because the government is the biggest investor. You know, one, we need gazetted areas where these youths can be accommodated and be transformed through ideological sessions. For example, you cannot say, like Kapulu is saying, that by giving someone a 10,000, you are ideologically rating this. And I want to warn most of the ghetto people, because if they can't see, then they should learn from Sipapa. At one time, we saw Sipapa with guns blazing around Kamucha. Today he's in jail. You know, we had a champion. I am a former bantamweight champion in boxing. I know that, for example, our brother who was shot, and actually even Genome 7 came out and committed himself, Zebra. Okay. These are the same incidences. So I think the youths should avoid these people. The best way is for us to liberate this country and orient them in the right ideology.
Very quickly, Mr. Kokoro.
In a minute, the youth should embrace our government programs. For example, the youth livelihood that has empowered them purposefully into technical skills, into ideological training. The youth should embrace the government, especially the work of Comrade Damulida and Emma, that they can be accommodated and absorbed into purposeful government work than being on the sidelines. For instance, to clear my brother, the youth in the last 10 years have had 222 billion. And the issue should be talking about is, how has it gone to the last man on the for the job, the trickle down. So with those initiatives, I strongly believe that the NRM is still this party that can take the youth from the kind of social maraise they are in into an economically empowered youth, purposefully to be utilized.
Mr. Chiega, your disadvantage, your time has been taken up.
Yes,
15
Chris,
seconds.
It's well, I'm simply saying government and police should stop criminalizing the youth. It is as simple as that. And politicians as well, starting from the president, they should be held accountable for their words. Because these youths don't just wake up and come to a rally. Someone is bringing them. And we need to hold those people accountable for whatever reason.
Roger Skiega, Philip Kakuru, and David Musiri, many thanks. That's it for our Kickstarter discussion.